After infiltrating a group of Russian prisoners, Craven takes the place of a convicted criminal and is transferred to a maximum security penitentiary. When he gets to his quarters, he meets his new roommate and Mofo reveals that the last guy who shared a cell with him only lasted a month. However, Craven says that Mofo has nothing to worry about, as he'll be out of there in the next 3 days. During his break in the courtyard, the hunter takes the opportunity to do his weight training and becomes a target for the veterans. However, when those guys try to intimidate him, Craven shows all his strength and proves that he can handle his opponents on his own. Seeing him take down 2 criminals with ease, the guards decide to take him to meet Corny, the leader of the Kirov gang. When questioned about his identity, Craven reveals that he is a hunter and, after tearing the fang off a tiger that is being used as a rug, he attacks Corny's henchmen. In a few seconds, the man eliminates the bodyguards and goes after the gang leader, because he is his real target. At that moment, he hits Corny in the neck with his fang and attacks the policeman to escape from the prison. After scaling the wall, Craven destroys the metal bars on the ceiling and runs up to the roof. At that moment, the security alarm goes off and the hunter is caught by the guards, so he has to jump onto the terrace and run to the wall. After climbing over the wall and jumping to the other side, Craven quickly runs across the snow so that the police can't reach him and ends up being caught in a snowstorm. Suddenly, he comes across a wild wolf, but the animal is intimidated by the hunter's gaze and retreats. When he realizes that the wolf is no longer a threat, Craven turns his back on him and runs to an aircraft that has been sent to pick him up. That day, a group of policemen find the body of prisoner 0864 buried in the snow, and only then do they realize that the man who was impersonating him was an imposter. 16 years earlier, at a university in upstate New York, Sergei and Dmitri were visited by their father, who showed up to tell them the news about their mother, who had ended her life. However, instead of taking the young men to the wake, Nikolai decides to take them hunting, as he believes that this way they will have fun and get over their grief more easily. Meanwhile, in northern Ghana, Calypso spends a few days with her grandmother and learns to play tarot cards, even though her parents don't approve of the idea. After envisioning her granddaughter's future, Cora gives her a potion, the formula of which has been passed down in her family for generations. The bottle contains the symbol of the spirit Papa Legba, the one who opens the gates to the other side. At that moment, Cora says that the potion is very powerful and can heal the person who drinks it in unimaginable ways. Meanwhile, in the very first minutes of the hunt, Nikolai hits his first target and advises Sergei not to fear the danger, as they are predators. Unlike his brother, Dmitri refuses to go near the deer's body and his father says he is a weak man. That night, while the young men sleep in the tent, Nikolai and his friends gather around the fireplace to devise a hunting strategy to capture the lion that has devoured more than 30 men. At this point, Bahari, the tour guide, asks why Nikolai likes hunting and the man reveals that his goal is to become a legend. The next day, as the group walks through the savannah, Alexei approaches and invites Nikolai to be his partner, but ends up being humiliated by the gangster. Minutes later, the two brothers come across the lion, but instead of eliminating it, Sergei looks right into the eyes of the king of the jungle and manages to connect with him. Suddenly, the young man hears a gunshot and realizes that the lion has been hit by his father's gun. Furious, the animal rushes at Sergei and attacks him ferociously. Seeing his son about to be devoured, Nikolai continues shooting and, after being hit several times, the animal runs away, but takes Sergei with it. In the meantime, Calypso goes on an outing with her parents, but while the couple are distracted photographing some giraffes, the girl decides to take a walk. During the walk, she comes across Sergei being carried by a lion and realizes that he has been hit by several bullets. Seeing Calypso approaching, the lion moves away and the young woman uses the potion she got from her grandmother to try to cure him. Minutes later, a group of rescuers arrived by helicopter and took Sergei to the city, where he received medical attention. However, shortly after arriving at the hospital, Sergei suffered a cardiac arrest and the doctors declared that he hadn't survived. Minutes later, the young man's heart starts beating again and a yellow glow emits from his eyes. After being treated by the doctors, Sergei finds the tarot card that Calypso put in his pocket before he was taken away by the helicopter and tries to figure out what it means. Suddenly, the doctor enters the room with Dmitri, who is relieved to see his brother alive. Nikolai then appears and says that he will take his son home, even though he knows that he should remain under medical observation as he has been lifeless for more than 3 minutes. On his return to London, Sergei hears a lecture from his father calling him a coward. According to Nikolai, Sergei almost lost his life because he was paralyzed with fear and didn't have the courage to shoot the predator. As Sergei is his eldest son, the man decides to keep him around to teach the young man how to run the family business, but Dmitri will return to study in New York. Just then, Nikolai says he has a present for his son and shows him the latest wall decoration in his office. When he sees the head of the lion that attacked him, Sergei is furious and says that his father should have been eliminated by the feline's claws. Frustrated, the young man locks himself in his room and is visited by a hawk, which lands on his window. When the bird leaves, Sergei decides to leave and, while putting his belongings in a backpack, he finds the vial of the potion that saved him. In the middle of the night, the young man escapes out of his bedroom window and walks across the roof, but ends up having an accident. To his surprise, Sergei lands on his feet like a feline, but ends up with his brother, who begs him not to leave. Dimitri's worst nightmare is to stay in that mansion with his father, so he tries to convince his brother to stay. However, Sergei claims that something happened to him after he was attacked by the lion, and now the young man has to find out who he is. In the morning, the young man arrives at a pier and manages to hitch a ride on a cargo ship going from England to Russia. Arriving in the far east of the country, Sergei comes across a herd of buffalo running towards him and tries to protect himself, believing he will be trampled by them. However, just as the young man was about to be hit, the leader of the herd decides to stop right in front of him and uses his body as a shield to protect him. In this way, all the other animals dodge him and Sergei manages to escape unharmed. After a few more minutes of walking, the young man reaches a forest where he used to play with his brother and finds the hut where he spent most of his time with his mother. That night, Sergei ends up sleeping in the forest and wakes up in the middle of the night to the presence of a deer. His first instinct is to chase that prey and, during the race, he realizes that his physical abilities have increased considerably. When the deer leaves, the young man realizes what a gorge he has managed to jump over and feels proud of himself. Suddenly, Sergei hears some shots and climbs up into a tree to investigate where the sound came from. At that moment, he identifies the presence of a pair of hunters and rushes over to check out the damage those guys have caused. When he realizes that the men have eliminated several buffalo just to steal their horns, Sergei is furious and takes the knife that was used to remove the horns. At this point, the hunter points his gun at him, but fails to intimidate him. After throwing the blade at the old man's head, Sergei attacks the other guy and knocks him out with several punches to the face. On that day, the young man fulfilled his father's wish and became a true hunter, because for the first time he had the courage to take a life. 16 years later, Sergei still keeps the letter he got from Calypso, but now he goes by the alias Craven, the hunter. After completing his mission to eliminate Corny, he returns to Russia and goes to the house he built in the forest. After a short break, Craven goes to meet a gang of hunters who are illegally selling buffalo horns and tries to stop them from leaving the reserve. When he realizes that these guys aren't willing to talk, Craven breaks into the vehicle and uses a pair of claws to attack the criminals. Seeing the hunter eliminating his cronies, Andre speeds up the vehicle and manages to escape, but Craven records the license plate number of the car to go after him. Weeks later, in London, Andre pays a visit to his contractor to inform him of what has happened, but soon discovers that Mr. Taglin has been eliminated. Upon entering the room, the man comes across Craven and, after checking that Andre's name is on the list of illegal hunters, he eliminates him with a crossbow. That same day, Calypso learns that Samantha Hodges, who was shot the week before, has lost her life and attends her friend's funeral. After the funeral, Calypso claims to know that Samantha was eliminated because she dared to challenge Corny and praises the promoter's bravery. As she is leaving, Calypso is approached by Craven, who hands her the tarot card that the woman gave him years ago. Immediately, Calypso recognizes him and Craven reveals that Corny has been eliminated, so he can't hurt anyone else. In addition to the boss, 6 other criminals were eliminated by the mysterious hunter whose identity the police have not yet been able to uncover. As a lawyer, Calypso doesn't approve of Craven's attitude, but says that Corny got what he deserved. At that moment, the hunter reveals that he has a list of criminals who need to be stopped and proposes a partnership with the woman, as she can help him find the location of those guys. After hearing the proposal, Calypso says she needs to think before giving her answer and advises Craven to be careful, because if he goes after those names, people he loves could get hurt. When he learns that Corny has been eliminated by the hunter, Alexei, who is now known as Rhino, arranges a meeting with his partners and reveals that he intends to take over the business from now on. At that moment, one of the men shoots him and Rhino falls to the ground, but then gets up as if nothing had happened and removes the bullets from his chest. Realizing that the man is invincible, Omer shoots his competitors to ensure that he is appointed Rhino's new partner. That night, Nikolai is at the nightclub where his son works and meets one of his partners, but they both end up being attacked by a group of snipers sent by Rhino. Luckily, Nikolai notices the approach and uses his partner's body as a shield to protect himself from the shots. While Dimitri hides under the piano, his father eliminates the shooters and all the customers flee the nightclub. Disappointed with his son's attitude during the attack, Nikolai says that he is a coward incapable of defending himself. The next morning, when he gets out of the shower, Dmitri is surprised by a visit from Craven, who has come to wish his younger brother a happy birthday. That evening, they both go to the nightclub for dinner and, a few minutes later, Nikolai shows up to join his children. The only day of the year that Craven appears in London is on his brother's birthday, and this year Dmitri says he forgives his brother for leaving him alone with his tyrannical father. After putting his drunk brother to bed, the hunter decides to go out to sleep in the park because he can't fall asleep in the house. But in the morning, when he returns to his apartment, he realizes that his brother has been captured and jumps off the building to go after the criminals, but he can't reach them. During the chase, Craven runs barefoot through the streets and hits the vehicle, but Omer and his cronies manage to escape once again. Furious, the hunter jumps onto the windshield and tries to break the glass of the armored car with his bare fists. At this point, the driver speeds off, but Craven continues his mission to break into the vehicle and destroys one of the doors. However, in the middle of the journey, he has an accident and falls to the asphalt. Minutes later, when he gets into the helicopter to get out of there, Omer is again surprised by the arrival of the hunter, who uses a net to try to stop the aircraft from taking off. Just then, a sniper grabs his gun to try and eliminate him, but Craven attacks him and gets rid of his enemy by throwing a metal bar in his direction. When the helicopter finally manages to leave, the man clings to the net to be taken with it, but the pilot drags him into the water and he ends up letting go after colliding with a metal structure. Desperate, Craven goes to Calypso's office to ask for help in finding out who those mercenaries were. Using the description given by the hunter, the lawyer asks her informants to track down those guys while Craven goes to break the news to his father. By now, Nikolai is aware of what happened to his son and tells him that he received a finger from Dmitri in a box. The gangster reveals that the criminals demanded 20 million for the ransom and only gave 48 hours for it to be transferred. However, Nikolai says he won't make the payment because it's not a question of money, but of power. By paying the ransom, he will be admitting his weakness to his adversary and, if he does, his entire empire will be ruined. That night, one of Calypso's informants discovers the identity of the mercenary who captured Dmitri and also reveals Omer's location. What the lawyer doesn't realize is that she has just fallen into a trap, as her informant has been hired by the foreigner to pass on the information to her. After eliminating the detective with his hypnosis skills, the stranger calls Rhino and informs him that the hunter is on his way to the monastery. That same day, Craven takes a plane to Turkey and finds Omer's hideout. After breaking in, the hunter uses poison darts to get rid of the guards and hides in the darkness while looking for Omer. Sneakily, he follows a pair of security guards and climbs the stairs to get to the penthouse. Halfway there, Craven takes out a man armed with his bare hands and, hearing his henchman's screams, Omer realizes that the hunter has already gone into action. The mercenary immediately sends his subordinates to eliminate him, but not even a group of armed men can stop the hunter. While quickly dodging the shots, Craven eliminates all his enemies and finally manages to reach Omer. Furious, Craven attacks him and threatens to throw the mercenary off the cliff, but Omer says that if he does that, he'll never find Dmitri. Just then, the hunter sees a missile being launched in his direction and has to jump to avoid being hit. After the fall, they both manage to survive and Craven asks where his brother is. Seeing a large block of concrete falling from the monastery, Omer realizes that there is no chance of survival and, just before being eliminated, informs him that Rhino sent him to capture Dmitri. At that moment, they are both hit by the debris caused by the missile and end up buried. Meanwhile, Rhino receives a visit from Dmitri and reveals that he met his father during a trip with a group of hunters. During the conversation, the pianist discovers that his older brother is the hunter and, when he found out that his name was on his list, Rhino sent his men to eliminate him. However, when they arrived at the apartment, Omer and his gang only found Dmitri, so they decided to take the young man prisoner. Meanwhile, in Turkey, when the guys who launched the missile go to check that Craven has been eliminated, they find only Omer's body and end up being attacked. Craven then calls Calypso and reveals that it was all a trap, then tells the woman to hide so she doesn't become the next victim. Just then, the lawyer sees 5 men entering the building and Craven asks her to go to the cargo terminal, as he will send a plane to pick her up. Over dinner, Rhino tells Dmitri about the degenerative disease he faced years ago. Everyone thought he wouldn't last long, but in his last months of life, the man met Professor Miles Warren, who was working in New York. The biochemist was developing a procedure to increase a human being's strength by up to 10 times and Rhino agreed to be his guinea pig. After undergoing the procedure, his skin began to harden and he became indestructible, like a rhinoceros. Since then, however, Rhino has experienced severe pain and has to take a mixture of medicines every day via an abdominal tube in order to be able to cope. After telling this story, the man claims that he will soon dominate Nikolai's territory and asks if Dmitri would like to be his partner, but the young man refuses to betray his family. So Rhino decides to eliminate him and is about to pull the trigger when one of his henchmen shows up and reveals that Craven is alive. Just then, the stranger appears and everyone gets ready to shoot, because they believe it's the hunter who will come out of the elevator. Seeing all those armed men ready to eliminate him, the stranger hypnotizes the guards and manages to pass them all without his presence being noticed. After meeting Craven, Calypso accompanies him to Russia and, during the walk to the hut, they are both surprised by a leopard attack. At that moment, the hunter begins a hand-to-hand fight with the animal and the two exchange a few blows until, finally, the feline gives up the fight and leaves. When the animal escapes, Craven reveals that he has known it since it was a cub and was surprised by its current size. Minutes later, the couple arrive at the hideout and the hunter asks what that potion was that Calypso used to save him. However, the lawyer reveals that it was her grandmother who made the drink and that Cora perished shortly after giving the bottle to her granddaughter. Suddenly, Craven receives a call from his brother and Rhino takes the cell phone from Dmitri's hands to talk to the hunter. His goal is to convince him to join him in bringing down Nikolai's empire, but Craven hangs up on him, so Rhino enlists the help of his men to track him down. However, before the soldiers spread out to search, the leopard appears and attacks the criminals while Dmitri takes the opportunity to escape. When the feline leaves, the mission continues and Rhino's henchmen set off through the woods in search of their prey. However, the roles are reversed and the men become targets for the hunter, who sets numerous traps in the forest to catch them. While Craven is in a duel against the mercenaries, Rhino sends a helicopter to drop bombs in the forest and Craven has to flee. Minutes later, he realizes that he has been hit by a poison dart and begins to suffer hallucinations in which he is surrounded by spiders. Suddenly, the stranger approaches and shoots the hunter again to enhance the effect of the toxin that has been injected into his body. At that moment, while Craven is bewildered, the stranger takes the opportunity to attack him, as his opponent has lost all his reflexes and is unable to fight back. When the hunter believes that he has finally caught his enemy and begins to strike him, he soon realizes that he is attacking a piece of wood. After kicking Craven, the stranger prepares to shoot him, but his plans are interrupted by Calypso, who shoots an arrow into his eye. Seeing the wounded hunter, the woman uses a healing potion to help him survive the toxins that have been injected into his body. During the escape attempt, Dmitri ends up being captured once again and is taken back to Rhino's vehicle. As the man and his team are leaving, they see a herd of buffalo running towards them and Rhino begins to transform to increase his chances of surviving the attack. While the other cars are being run over by the herd, the monster goes to meet Craven and the two start a duel. When Rhino is knocked off the truck, he uses his body as a wall to stop the vehicle and causes a serious accident. After checking that his brother is still alive, Craven picks up a pair of daggers and charges at Rhino, but his blades are unable to harm his skin. Despite being lighter and more agile, the hunter cannot compete with his opponent's physical strength. Even being precise with his blows, Craven is unable to move Rhino's body and ends up being captured by him. Just as he is about to be finished off, the hunter finds his opponent's weak point and hits him in the abdomen with a metal bar. In doing so, he manages to seriously injure his opponent and then wraps a metal cable around his body. Determined to eliminate Rhino once and for all, Craven lassos one of the buffalo with the other end of the cable and the monster ends up being trampled by the entire herd. As he approaches to finish the job and eliminate his enemy, the hunter realizes that this won't be necessary, as Rhino would never survive those wounds. After rescuing his brother, Craven goes to meet his father, who is in the middle of a hunting trip, and discovers that it was he who revealed his identity to Rhino. When he discovered that Alexei wanted to eliminate him, Nikolai decided to give him a new target, as he knew he wasn't strong enough to take him on. After hearing the confession, Craven leaves disappointed. Soon after, a grizzly bear appears and Nikolai is eliminated before he has a chance to shoot. A year later, the hunter returns to London to celebrate his brother's birthday and Dmitri reveals that he has met a scientist from New York who has helped him a lot. During the conversation, Craven discovers that his brother is continuing the empire his father built and now has superpowers. Thanks to Professor Miles Warren, Dmitri has acquired the abilities of a chameleon and, in the process, his moral sense has been completely corrupted. That night, Craven pays a visit to his father's old house and finds a letter written by him, in which Nikolai encourages him to accept his destiny as the greatest hunter the world has ever seen. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.